Welcome to the first installment of Star Trek Selections. We will begin, naturally, with the original series, Season 1. These are my top 5 episodes of the season. Coming in at number 5, The Corbomite Maneuver. Written by Jerry Soule, directed by Joseph Sargent. I consider this to be the first episode of what we now know as the show Star Trek, though including the original pilot, The Cage, which gave us Spock, and the second pilot, Where No Man Has Gone Before, which introduced Kirk. The Corbomite Maneuver was the 3rd episode filmed, and inexplicably the 10th episode broadcast. I consider it the first because it is the prototype of what the show would be going forward. Bones is there, Scotty too, with Sulu and Uhura. Although Uhura is in the wrong colour uniform, she really rocks the red. Rounding out the cast for this episode is Anthony D. Call as Bailey. He is panicky and aggressive and insubordinate. How did this guy make it through the academy? He wouldn't have gotten anywhere near the Enterprise D. Anyway, the plot concerns the Enterprise being vastly outmatched by an alien craft piloted by a being named Baylock, voiced by Lurch himself, Ted Cassidy. Kirk is able to avoid apparent destruction by playing a little chess game.
Not chess, Mr. Spock. Poker.
Sorry, Captain, poker game. Bluffing his way out. But it's not quite over. There is a little more tussling, crew getting tossed around the ship in a classic Trek style, until Baylock's ship is left powerless. Kirk, Bones and Bailey beam over to find that Baylock is actually a childlike alien, played by an extremely young Clint Howard. Baylock's just lonely, so Bailey decides to stay with him. True Star Trek right here. A threatening adversary becomes a friend, and we all learn a little something. The reason this episode makes my top 5 is mainly because of what I mentioned earlier, the fact that it is the genesis of what would become Star Trek. But I also really dig that whole Corbomite Maneuver thing. At number 4 is Space Seed, written by Gene L. Coon and Kerry Wilbur, and directed by Mark Daniels. Well, here it is, the episode that gave us Khan, and eventually his infamous wrath. Most Trekkies will probably want to burn me in effigy for putting this low on the list, but I'm sorry, there are 3 episodes in this season I like better. A lot of you will probably even agree with 1 or 2 of them. Anyway, here's what happens in Space Seed. The Enterprise finds a ship containing a bunch of people who have been in stasis for a couple of centuries. They wake one up, and he happens to be the ruthless tyrant of the past, Khan Noonien Singh.
Khan is my name. Khan, nothing else. Khan.
The great Ricardo Montalban. Now, the ship's historian, yes, that's a thing, Lieutenant Milo MacGyvers, played by Madeleine Roux, has a real lady boner for powerful men, so Khan is really revving her up. That, plus a bit of abuse, convinces Milo to help Khan revive his people and take over the ship. Khan almost kills Kirk, and Milo decides to switch teams again. Kirk and Khan fight, and Kirk wins, somehow. Kirk then sends Khan and his people to SETI Alpha 5. This should be the last we see of him. It's not like he's going to turn up again and kill Spock or anything. I love that movie. I mean, we all do, right? Anywho, obviously this is one of the most iconic episodes of Star Trek ever, introducing one of the franchise's greatest antagonists and setting up one of the best Star Trek movies. And in its own right, it is easily one of the best of the show's first season. Number 3, Balance of Terror. Written by Paul Schneider and directed by Vincent McAvity. The first ever appearance of the Romulans. This had to be here. The episode begins with Kirk performing a marriage ceremony between 2 of his crew. Then they get a distress call from a Federation outpost near the Romulan neutral zone. What follows is a suspenseful cat-and-mouse game between the Enterprise and the Romulans, who, to everyone's surprise, look just like Spock. This makes this week's random jackass crew member, Lieutenant Styles, extremely suspicious of Spock. Of course, he soon learns to not be such a racist prick. The Enterprise and Romulans fight, with the Enterprise eventually victorious, at the cost of the groom from the wedding at the beginning. One of the highlights of this episode is how the Romulans are dealt with. Rather than being just moustache-twirling evildoers, they are depicted as simply people with a differing ideology. Now, they're still the bad guys because they are part of a totalitarian empire, with Roman accoutrements and all. Mark Lenard, soon to reappear repeatedly as Spock's father Sarek, plays the Romulan commander, and it is a sensitive yet powerful performance. No wonder they asked him back so often. I also think this is one of William Shatner's best episodes, and Leonard Nimoy stretches that Vulcan stoicism to its absolute limit when dealing with Lieutenant Styles' suspicion of Spock. He plays it as though, underneath the cold Vulcan expression, he's covering pain with a veneer of amusement. Balance of Terror is a tense, powerful episode of television. My choice for number 2 is The Return of the Archons, written by Boris Sobelman, with a story by Gene Roddenberry, and directed by Joseph Pevney. Purge, anyone? The Enterprise goes to Beta 3 to investigate the disappearance of the USS Archon a century earlier. The landing party is attacked, and only Sulu is beamed back, but his personality has been altered. Kirk, Spock, and McCoy beam down with a couple of red shirts, and soon find that everyone there is acting like Sulu, and talking about the impending festival, which the landing party soon find out is a period of unrestrained sex and violence. Well, as unrestrained as 1960s TV gets, anyway. They escape harm with the help of a couple of people who are unaffected by the weird ray which zaps people into becoming pleasant zombies, or of the body, meaning part of Landru, the mysterious being who controls the people. However, they are eventually captured, and Bones is assimilated. Can't wait to get to the Borg stuff later down the line. Another ally is found who helps Kirk and Spock get to Landru, which turns out to be a computer. So Kirk paradoxes it to death. This is one of my favourite Star Trek's weird planet that looks like Earth in Another Time episodes. Don't we have a name for that yet? You know, like bottle episode? I suppose I could make one up. Snow globe episode? Nah, I'll mull it over. Unfortunately, we don't really explore that much here. The Return of the Archons is more about free will, and Kirk gives it to the Beatons, whether they want it or not. Finally, at number 1, it's The City on the Edge of Forever, written by Harlan Ellison and directed by Joseph Pevney. It just had to be. It's widely regarded as the best episode of the series, and among the best Trek of all time, and it is easily my favourite original series episode. I'm not worrying about spoilers here, because even if you're just a casual Trek viewer, chances are you've seen this, or at least heard about it. So basically, after accidentally injecting himself with a stimulant, Dr. McCoy goes nuts and beams himself down to the nearby planet. When a landing party follow him down, they encounter the Guardian of Forever, an apparently sentient time portal, which a crazed Bones steps through as the Guardian is showing Kirk and Spock the history of Earth. They soon discover that the Enterprise is now gone, and the Guardian informs them that Bones has changed history and the Federation no longer exists. It is then up to Kirk and Spock to go back to where Bones went and prevent him from changing anything. They find themselves in Depression-era Chicago, sometime before Bones arrives. They meet and are aided by Edith Keeler, a breathtaking Joan Collins. Edith runs a soup kitchen and strongly believes in helping others and peaceful coexistence. As Kirk and Edith begin to develop a romance, Spock discovers that the event Bones changed was that he saved Edith's life, which allowed her to usher in an era of peace in America, but prevented them from entering World War II, which allowed the Nazis to win. The final gut punch is when Kirk has to physically prevent Bones from saving Edith.
Do you know what you just did?
He knows, Doctor. He knows.
Wow, this is a great episode. This is what I show to the non-initiated to say, see, it's good, right? I love everything from the gorgeous Joan Collins to Shatner's excellent work, the best of James T. Kirk, to that crazy cool idea of the Guardian of Forever, who gets even cooler in a few decades. But it is that ending that cements The City on the Edge of Forever as the greatest episode of Star Trek's first season, and indeed the entire series. Join me next time on Star Trek Selections, when I'll be looking into my favourite episodes of Star Trek Season 2. Live long and prosper.